You're in for an absolute treat today on GC Talks. We have Pastor Chris Brown. He's going to light you on fire. He's pastor of the Well Church in Columbia, Tennessee. He's an author. He's a speaker. Check this out. All right, so I'm here with Pastor Chris Brown, and man, I love the title, Pastor, of your book as well, The Sting of Your Past into transforming the sting of your past into purpose for today. And it kind of goes right along with what we talk about here on GC Talks, and that's really getting to the crux of faith, man. And let me ask you this. A lot of people have a past, and I think that, growing up in the church, me, myself, I look at a lot of business people. When you talk to them, it's, they started off with this disclaimer, like my life is not worthy. I've done some things, and they look at it as a void that might keep them from God or keep them from experiencing faith. Talk a little bit about that and bring in the title of this book, man. What a cool title. Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I've always had a passion for a biblical term that's called stewardship that is very, very confused. A lot of people think it automatically means something about money. Mm-hmm. And although there is a money principle to it, when you look at Matthew 25:14 through 30 in the scriptures, it talks a little bit about, a master giving little allotments of bags of gold or this talent, whatever. Mm-hmm. Trying to summarize real quickly, but it gives a little bit to each and every one of us, and how we manage for the master. Mm-hmm. Those of us that are listening in, of people of faith, you're managing for the master. He is going to bless those who manage it well. Well, that's not just a money principle. That also goes down to our energy, our time, and our relationships, our influence, our all sorts of things. The way that we handle our marriages, parenting, or even our bodies as the temple of God. And so this whole idea of transforming the sting of your past into purpose for today is an idea of stewardship. Mm. Our stories, our pain, the things that we've gone through in our lifetime, we can either just push them down and act like they never happened, which is very, very, very unhealthy. Mm-hmm. We can dwell on it and, that's not healthy either. I like to say that we don't ignore it. We also don't run toward it and super dwell on it. We want to make sure that we dance with it. Mm. We know it's there, but we're in control. And so we're trying to suck the nutrients out of our past and give it purpose for today. And so it could be, we all have pain in different areas of our life, but it could just be, maybe it's a specific time, like you went through a miscarriage or something like that. Well, now you can empathize and actually looking for people who are going through miscarriages, where you can suck the nutrients out of all that pain, and you can empathize with them like you couldn't if you hadn't gone through a miscarriage.
So I love it because these discussions always just go organically, and that's the way they should go. So I'm going to stay on that for a second. So as a person that's raised in church my whole life, in ministry, both traditional and then now non-traditionally, and then a business guy. First of all, I don't know any business people that don't care about money, and so that's going to get their attention, right? Okay, hold on, he's talking about stewardship. But at the same time, it's all the quote gurus out there, the guys and the gals that, from a secular perspective are influencing people. It's interesting because they can relate to what you just said, but I don't think they sometimes equate it to faith. I guess my question would be then is, have we as a church, or has the church missed it in many cases by, trying to, boxing it in, where Jesus, he's all about, like the woman at the well, right? Taking our past and then fueling that for the future, or fueling that to touch others. I guess my point is did all this guru stuff, did it kind of originate, maybe they just don't know it, from the kingdom? Did it all come from God anyway? Is he the original guru? You know what I'm saying? In other words, because I hear you saying that and it fires me up. And I think that a lot of people want to motivate people from their past, but they don't necessarily blend that with the fact that that's connected to faith. What do you think about that?
So, Psalm 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's,
right,
and the fullness thereof." Okay, and another translation says the earth is the Lord's and all it contains. Well, all it contains, that means everything. So that's not just cars and houses. That's also your kids. That's also your spouse. That's also your energy. He owns it all. And so therefore, when he's the owner by default, we're not the owner. We are the manager. We are managing. Genesis says he's given us dominion, right, over the things of this world. And so if we're managing for the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, what does that look like? Well, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2 says those who have been called to be managers must prove faithful. So what does faithful look like? That means that we are managing our past. Because that past, you think about the word history. History actually broken down as his story. It's not ours. It's his story, not ours. And so we're managing his story. And his fingerprints have been all throughout our journey. And we're either going to give him glory because we're not in that pain anymore. And we're going to give him glory, or we're going to have this victim's mentality of like, oh, yeah, poor me. This happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me. Well, think about that. What if we were the kids, we're the father, and our kids were to do that for us and say, oh, poor me, I've never had anything. Or, yeah, I went through some stuff, right? But my father is a loving father and didn't keep me there. Right? So when we kind of whine and complain about all the pain we've been through, we're saying, God, what you have done for me is not enough. All I can focus in is on the pain. So this book, what the point is that perspective-wise, we would actually see pain as ministry opportunity. And those that are listening in that maybe aren't people of faith, maybe you call that not ministry opportunity, but maybe impact. Or some kind of just going to impact people in your workplace, or impact people in your school, or impact people in your neighborhood. But those of us that are faith-based folks, like the impact, the amount of ministry you can do, maybe even launch a nonprofit. Or for me, my wife and I, we launched a church just recently. And when we did, it's all of bringing all that pain and taking that, bottling it all up, and using it as rocket fuel for us to see people, to see their pain, and make sure they feel visible, and make sure they feel empathized with and loved on, pastored, and shepherded. So we all have this pain. It's what we do with it that matters.
That's good. Yeah, I often say, sometimes the church we've done such a great job, I think, feeding the poor, ministering to the homeless, and taking care of the widow, which God instructs us to do. But, as someone who God's put a burden for the business professional, the entrepreneur, I often say there could be that person in the tallest skyrise, right, in downtown, whatever city we're in, that can be sitting in an office lonely, possibly with a gun in their mouth, going, hey, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I've got all the money in the world. And I'm reminded of the guy Jairus in the Bible. He had everything, but his daughter was sick, and what he had couldn't pay for what he needed. And I just think, I think that I just think there's such an opportunity. And my question would be, do you think, as obviously the kingdom's progressing, right? Things are happening. Do you think that God's about to pull all the stops out? Like he's hitting it from all angles. Do you see, I think Billy Graham said this not long before he passed. He said, he sees one of the greatest moves or next moves of God coming out of the marketplace. What's your thoughts on that? Have you put any thought to the marketplace and what could happen in that?
I'm just a really, really big advocate on controlling what you can control and not hyper-focusing on things that you can't control. I'm just really big on that. Actually, there's a whole entire chapter in the book about that, okay, what can I control? What I can control right now, are there some biblical principles when it comes to relationships and also when it comes to finances? And instead of, just to take the financial aspect of your question, man, right now, you don't know what's going to happen next in the financial realm. Well, what we do know is some very biblical principles that are in the Bible that talk about how to manage money well, regardless of the economic condition. We do know that the Bible says in Proverbs 22:7 that the borrower is enslaved to the lender. We know in Luke 14:28 that he says, Jesus himself said, who would ever sit down first and build a house without counting the cost? Meaning, we need to budget. I think it's Proverbs 29:18. It says, where there is no vision, the people perish. So when you don't have a budget, right, another translation says you'll cast off restraint. And that is literally how a lot of Americans are doing. So budget, stay out of debt. Another Bible verse says, Proverbs 13:22, it says a good person leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Proverbs 21:20 says that in the house of the wise is choice food and oil, but fools gulp it all down. So these are all verses they're consistent truths in our lives to save and to invest. The Bible's also very clear about giving and being generous regardless of the economy. Proverbs 11:25 says, those who refresh others themselves are refreshed. It doesn't say except for when the economy is going to do this or do that. And he wants us to be a generous people.
It sounds
I
like
think you stick true to those biblical principles, and you invest in things that are less risky. You're trying to find something right at the perfect intersection between moderate risk and also a good return. And then I think when you go back to Matthew 25:14-30, you are a servant to the master that he can trust and he can give more to. You've been faithful with little, so he can trust you with much.
Sounds, Pastor, if you've done anything today, I think you made the Bible cool. Like, in other words, I'm listening to you right now as a person in the marketplace, and I'm thinking, hey, you know what? I didn't realize all this was in the Bible. Of course, I knew, but I mean, what a self-help book. That sounds like God knew all of this before the foundations of time. And, there's so much there. Let me ask you kind of one last question here. I kind of asked this and with everybody in one way or the other. What do you do when you want to quit, man? Because one thing I've noticed over the last couple of years, and in both the church, the secular world, and I don't know if we've ever experienced anything, obviously, like the last couple of years, but the epidemic of people quitting, bowing out, people giving up on their dreams, just or their marriage or their relationship, their family. And what do you do when you want to quit? Because I don't think enough people share that.
Yeah, well, I think we got to understand that, again, and going back to, I'm a pastor, so I'm sorry, but just as a man of faith, for me, I think Jesus died on a cross and rose from the grave, and everyone listening in can believe that from different, everyone's in different spots of their journey. But for me, in my mind, he didn't die and rise again for me to live halfway between bondage and victory. He didn't say in John 10:10, I came to give you life and give you life half full, life half abundantly. And so for me, when I quit, what I'm doing is I'm settling. So I'm settling in this land of in between. I'm not quite in bondage, but I'm not quite living in victory. I'm just existing. And so for me, it's like, the quitting thing is like, I'm not going to quit because I know that God wants more for me. He wants me to have a healthier marriage. He wants me to have a better relationship with my kids. He wants me to fulfill my occupational desires within my career. He wants me to live a healthy life physically. And so he wants me to be intellectually stimulated and to know more and in my mind and emotionally. He wants me to be more healthy. That's what he wants for me. And so for me to quit, I just know the second that I quit, and man, if those of you that have quit for 1 or 2 days, this is true. When you quit, you're like, dude, I just give up. Whatever. I'm just staying home from work today. And you sit on the front porch and you sit on that rocking chair and you're there for about an hour and you've got your beverage of choice. Maybe it's a sweet tea. Maybe it's something stronger than that. But you're sitting on that front porch. You're an hour in, 2 hours in. You feel more miserable. You don't feel rested. You feel lazy. You literally know your capacity. You know what you're meant for. You know what your ability is, and you're just being a baby. And you don't like it. You don't like the way you feel. So I think for real, you can go golfing for 4 months. You can get massages every day. The more that you are just looking into your belly button, going, "Poor me," you're going to be more miserable. So again, I'll go back to that verse, Proverbs 11:25. I don't know if I'll say it slower this time. Those who refresh others themselves are refreshed. If you're listening in today and you need refreshing, listen, find somebody, no matter what your industry, and serve them well. Minister to them. Give them some kind of product or service that makes their life better, and you will be refreshed because you're adding value to this world instead of it being about you. If you do that well, and you do that over thousands of people and millions of people, you will be refreshed, not only emotionally and mentally, but you will be refreshed financially too. If you serve enough people, you will never have to worry about money.
Man, well said, Pastor. If you are in or anywhere around Columbia, Tennessee, I mean, Uber, bus, drive, distance, get to the Well Church. Pastor, I just appreciate you hanging out with us. Was some great insight there, man. Just outstanding. I can't wait to watch it back and take notes myself.
Total honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Man, what a great word by Pastor Chris Brown. Listen, if you came into this episode dry, I promise you, you're wet now. If you came in dry, you might be on fire. Listen, Chris Brown talked about a lot of things, but the one thing he kept coming back to, and I got to repeat this one more time. The way to refresh yourself is to refresh others. And you know, if you really look at it, it's everything that Jesus and the whole kingdom principles are founded upon. He says to love your neighbor as yourself. He talks about do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Give, and it shall be given. And so, you know what? Refresh, and you'll be refreshed. So here's the challenge today. We're all going to want to quit. If you don't want to quit right now, talk to me when you do want to quit, because we all do want to give up. But when you do, pour into others. When you begin to give to others and pour into others, God begins to pour into you. That's the secret, right? That's the circle of life inside the kingdom of God. Hey, we'll see you next time on GC Talks. I'm David Villa. Have a great one.